Welcome back, Holly. This is our first video
Yeah.
podcast and we haven't met in person. So I'm excited to actually have a face-to-face conversation with you. Would you like to introduce yourself for everybody who didn't get to connect with you last time?
Oh my God, why'd they miss it?
You're going to have to go back now.
You're going to have to. I'm Holly Hughes. I'm an author and intuitive healer here in the Charlotte area. And I came up with a new tagline, which is as snarky as I am, which is I'm professional and weird at the same time.
I love that.
Right.
That's so in alignment with me.
Right. Because you help everyone with that mindset stuff. And I help them clear up the emotional baggage of every pain that's limiting them and stopping them from doing what they want to do. So I'm trying to come up with a good one sentence. And that's kind of my work in progress. That word did not come out.
It was right there. It was
so close. So close.
I love that because I really feel like when you're doing healing work, that's such a big piece to creating space to do new things in your life, is to be able to heal up that emotional baggage. And I guess I'm curious, when you're working with clients, where do you typically start? So somebody comes in with you with all this heavy stuff. Step one, where would you guide yourself or guide the client?
When a person first comes into the room, especially if they're in a really heightened space of emotional turmoil, I like just to ground in the room. If the room is virtual or on the phone as well, what I just try to do is it's almost like syncing heartbeats for me spiritually.
Yeah.
So that I can feel where you're at, which I can, right? I physically can feel it. And so I try to go there, and as we start to talk, I try to find the safest way to make you feel comfortable with me. I'm pretty direct. I don't wrap stuff in fluff. I'm not that person. If you need someone who's do you need 17 pillows? And
yeah.
You will feel safe, but in this is my tone of voice and this is what you get. And I like to make jokes and I'll drop an F-bomb every now and again. But really, when you come in, it's about meeting you.
Yeah.
Meeting the part of you that you don't let other people meet. That's the version of you that I'm going to connect with.
I love that. Meeting the part of you that I think there is just a version of you that only you know. And the deepest, the darkest, the heavy stuff. And so for people who have been walking around people pleasing for a long time, or who are pretty detached from who they really are, how do you move forward? How do you get back in touch after being out of touch with yourself for so long?
I think that really depends on per person, right? I'm sure you deal with that too. Some people have to move slower than others. I like to say I don't have an agenda for how quickly you do or make any choice or change.
Yeah.
I really think it has to be at your pace, right? Because I can know something, and you can know something, but you might not be ready. And so that means we have to get you to an emotional place of being ready. And that might be me, dealing with anxiety first, or it really is typically about never being loved the way you needed, and never being able to feel safe enough to articulate what you need so that you go please other people. So if I please you, ultimately that means that you'll do it back for me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work that way.
Right.
It never works that way. And I think that's a mistake a lot of younger people make. And then if people more my age bracket and older are still doing it, it's they haven't been brave enough to change.
Right. I love that you said something about loving yourself in that way. I feel like that's such a big block for a lot of people. And I think even just in the work that I've done with people, I noticed that some people approach it and they're like, yeah, I know I need to love myself. And it's this big, abstract idea that we need to love ourselves. And what does loving yourself mean for you? How does that show up? How do you experience that?
Oh yeah. Well, I have my own issues as a person, right? I like to say this.
We all do.
So for me, I'm very body dysmorphic.
Okay.
And it really came from being a dancer at a young age and then developing a very curvy body. An hourglass figure is not what you see in ballet,
Right.
like, hips,
100%.
ass,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, so for me, that was always really hard to kind of deal with. And I am trying to like be like, okay, so I have a cute tummy. Like if I saw my body on someone I loved, I'd be like, oh, delicious, right?
Yeah.
So how I like to start when doing this with other people, and I do it myself. So I practice what I preach is before I go to bed at night. I've been doing this for like since the summer. I go like this. I love you, Holly. And then I let myself feel what it feels like to be loved by me. And
Yeah.
then I feel more lovable. So, right? Like, so because there's that whole thing where people do, I'm going to hold up my phone as a mirror. I would never do that. If I looked
Right.
in a mirror and said, I love you, I'd be like, look at the zit on my forehead, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I have another wrinkle because that's what the world tells us. So I'm working really hard into not be brainwashed. I'm trying hard not to always have filters on everything.
Yeah.
Right. Because we get so used to seeing that. And I have a daughter who's just turned 14, and I refuse to give her any of my crap when it comes to body stuff. And she doesn't have it. I'm doing something right because she feels sassy, and I want her to. I want her to be like, this is me. This is how I come. Ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
Or how do kids? She goes like this.
My 14-year-old's got the peace sign for days. Like that's the
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that. And one thing that we don't talk about enough is that we all have those issues, like whether it's body issues or skin issues or whatever the case might be. Like we all have our own little thing that we're heightened and aware of, that we pick at and that kind of thing. One thing that I really like to do when I'm doing just like self-love practices is I actually prefer to close my eyes and just feel into the energy, because like I know at my soul level, at the purest level, shit's all good. Like it's just some
Yeah.
good stuff in there. But one of the things for anybody who was listening and not watching the actual video, one thing that you did that I absolutely love is you put your hand over your heart when you were talking about that. And
Yeah.
there's actually scientific evidence that shows that when we put our hand over our heart, it's like the same chemical receptors as getting a hug.
Yeah.
And so that's
It
just like,
really works. It
it,
really
it
works. Like,
does. Just like putting your hand over your heart for a second is like giving yourself a hug. And so just that intentional time of like coming within and like caring for yourself, I think is so, we don't do it enough. And so I love that you also were saying like finding a way that works for you, because some of the stuff out there, like the mirror work, I've done that in the past. There have been times where that like does totally click for me. And there's times where I'm like, this is fucking stupid.
yeah,
I can't,
exactly. Exactly. I think, like I pray every night before I go to bed. Now, that can have all sorts of ramifications for different people,
Yes.
faith, religion, whatever, but I do. I do my own version of, and it's really personal. So I'm actually not going to share it because some things you can keep private in your world, but I'm basically grateful for the day.
Yeah.
I ask that tomorrow be better, that I do better, that there's more love in the world and less hate. And
Mm-hmm.
I make sure I am grateful for me. So I think self love is like people who hide in being busy and people who are off, like not feeling great about ourselves. And I go through periods of that. I deal with depression sometimes. Like there's so many reasons why. Or if you have young children and you're just basically a snot rag for a couple of years, right?
Yep.
You lose your sense of self. For people, again, like maybe in their 50s and whatever, your kids are older now. And then you're like rediscovering, who am I? Who am I when I'm not just mom or just working or whatever? And parenting now seems to be extending to children in their 20s a little codependently, I gotta say, in the world. Like you gotta let them make some mistakes. It sucks and it hurts, and no, nothing life endangering or anything like that. But we did it, right? We survived those sorts of things. So love yourself enough to know that you did a good job.
Yeah. I think there's like just in parenting and especially parenting with older kids. So I left my house at 17. I've been on my own financially independently all the other ways, by myself since I was 17. And so it is like confusing to me. And I like my kids almost always like we've talked about like, okay, at 18, you are going to be capable of making your own choices. And I think what it comes down to is giving other people, your kids, whoever, and this is even in relationships too, but trusting that they know what they're doing. Like, trust that they have the ability to figure stuff out, trust that they're capable of making their life. I actually got off a call not too long ago, and it was a person who's in a relationship with an addict. And at some
Mm,
point, it's like, how do we hand people their own power back instead of trying to fix them, resolve it for them, do it for them? Like, how do we begin to hand, as a society, really hand people their power back to trust that we're responsible for ourselves and not other people in the way that they want us to be, you know?
yeah, I have a friend whose daughter went to college and didn't know how to do laundry. And
Yeah.
that you're not helping. That's not helping. And if their laundry turns pink, like almost every boy in college, that one time they don't know to put red in with the like whatever, it comes out pink, you survive it. I think that's the thing. Or again, my daughter's still pretty young, but if she doesn't do her homework, I ask her, do you have homework? Well, I think you have homework. Those are the two questions. And then if she doesn't do it and she gets bad grades, I guess she better learn that. She
Yep.
better learn that now and then deal with the guilt and whatever, because our kids have all this anxiety because they're not being given the chance to cope.
Yes.
They have to cope
Yes.
with failing and disappointing and messing up and a bad grade and a bad room and like and whatever those consequences for you and in your household that would be, that's fine. Mine is so sensitive that she spins out of control. I got to wait for her spin and her anxiety to end before I parent. And
Yes.
that's how it has to work here. So I just think it's a life skill. And then if your young children or young adults are always looking to you for approval, aren't they then going to set up a dynamic in relationship where they need approval from someone? And that's codependency.
Codependency isn't talked about enough in those more like smaller ways, because
Mm-hmm.
we think of codependency as somebody who literally can't survive without another person, but when we're parenting, or even like I said, even in relationships, we have to give people their autonomy and trust for them to be able to do it themselves. And I think there's such value in fucking up. Like, there's such value in doing it wrong so you know not to do that again. There's value in the consequence of it so that you know not to do it again. So there's all of these pieces that I know I had to learn a lot of shit the hard way,
Mm.
being on my own so young, having children so young. Like, for me, that was sobering, but I owe my success to it. I owe my happiness and like where I'm at in my life to that. But it was a long 8 years, it was a long time of doing things the wrong way to be able to get to that lesson and be able to actually take the lesson and then grow from it. So I would love to see people really begin to hand their kids their power back.
Yeah, I'd also love to like leave an option for people that whole I had this notion too. When I'm 23, I'm going to know who I'm going to marry. By the time I'll be married by the time I'm 24 to 26, first kid at 28, second at 30. But none of that happened for me that awesomely fictitious way.
Yes.
How about, so what if you were with someone for 4 years when you're in your 20s? Just because you spent time with him doesn't mean you need a lifelong commitment. Maybe that was your growth. Maybe that was your time to learn what an immature relationship is.
Yeah.
What if it was your time to learn how to say, hey, when you still go out with your buddies all the time, I feel left out. And maybe if that they can't change their behavior, they have no interest in it, then they're not your person. So time doesn't mean we've done this, so then that.
Right.
Right. And it's heartbreaking. You feel like a failure. All of those things are true. That's true. You're going to feel those things, but you'll survive the feeling of it and you'll make different choices after.
Yeah. I love that time doesn't mean. And I think we do, as like a society, try to apply meaning to these. Oh, well, it's been, I have friends who have been in a relationship for a year and a half and it's going well. So they're like waiting for the ring. And as somebody who's been married for, we've been together almost 18 years, like, it's just like, okay, so if you're fighting about this and your bank accounts aren't merged and you don't have kids, then you have to really resolve that before I would say jump into that. And it's just things, it's like a time pressure of like, oh, I'm getting in my late 30s or I'm doing this and that. And
Mm-hmm.
it is wild how we create meaning out of these circumstances, and we kind of jump in, and in that we abandon our intuition
Yeah,
and our
for
alignment with
sure.
ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it requires a whole other level of bravery. And there, like, I'm not discounting family pressure, society pressure, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever, but I think you can choose to do relationship how you want. It's even something, again, I go back and teach my own kid. If you don't like how daddy and I communicate, you don't ever have to be with someone who communicates like that. If we're too like, we're very blunt, right?
Yeah.
If you need someone who speaks softer, then choose someone. You don't have to do what I do, but like, you can teach that to your children too.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
or all the marriages of people who are together because they can't afford to get divorced, or they want to stay in the same house until their kids are out of school, right?
Yeah.
This is pretty normal. I totally understand it. I like that. But there has to be a little more honesty, because you think your children don't know, but you're teaching your children what marriage and relationship is like by doing whatever you guys are doing inside that house.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Like your kids pick up on every behavior, every pattern of behavior, every style of communication
yeah,
interacting. Like your kids are so hyper aware of that as the basis and foundation for what they are going to expect in their future. So I love that you're, saying to your kids, if you don't like this, like demand more.
yeah,
Ask for
do it
more. Look for
different.
what you
You can,
want.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think in general she will pick a much more emotionally forward person, and that wouldn't work for me. I'd be like, you're needy, I don't need that.
Yeah.
I kind of love like a cat, like, I love you, I really love you, let's snuggle, I'm gonna purr, I'll see you later, I'm good now. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's just me in general. When I was younger, I needed much more physical touch as affirmation, but it was because I was so insecure.
Yeah.
I always say that if there's like a need is different than a want. A need is heat. It has like healing that needs to happen.
Yeah.
So it's a subtle difference. So but yeah, I don't know. You don't have to do it. Like, what works for me won't work for you. And that's fine. But yeah, have kids, don't have kids. I mean, like crazy. Get
Yeah.
married older. I mean, I
Yeah.
had the starter marriage, but get married older. I waited to have kids. That can be really super scary, but there's like so much support out there for whatever, or choose to be child free. You could do, I think there's just so many choices. I think I talk about this a lot lately. There's a lot of labels out there, right?
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be honored, tagged, named. They want their, like, all of that. And in some ways that's amazing. That's great. I'm glad you can do all that and you find community, but at some point it becomes divisive.
Right.
I'm this, you're not that. I'm this, that. And then I kind of want people to go to honor who they are and whatever their choices are, but also remember the humanity in others.
Yeah.
And just because we don't agree on everything, we don't use the same words for everything, it doesn't mean there's not some good there. I think we've gotten way too divisive.
I I would absolutely agree with that statement. I think especially over the last few years, I think it's been a very big pull of like these polarizing statements that are creating separation, and you're this or you're that, or you're not this or you're not that. And it's very hard to not, because as a like our evolutionary feature is to belong and to want to belong and to want to fit ourselves into whatever category that we can so that we do belong. And so that's normal to want to fit into a category labeled with other people so that we can be part of that. And so it does take courage to be willing to say, that doesn't feel like a reflection of who I am. And I think that a lot of this conversation comes back to, who am I on the
Mm-hmm.
inside when no one's watching? Who am I when I'm not trying to fit into these categories? Who am I, even if it's not what other people want me to be or what they want to hear from me? And I know you wrote this fantastic book since we last talked called Real Not Perfect. And I would love to hear like just some tips for somebody who's trying to get back into that real version of themselves, away from the perfecting the Instagram pictures, like whatever bullshit we're all putting out there. what do you suggest? Like, what are some tips we can give people to get back into their authenticity?
My book is full of healing tips and Holly's healing homework and guided meditations. It really is, the book itself is about defining yourself in your own words. Are you who your family says you are? Are you who your friends say you are? If you were going to use 3 words to describe yourself, are they the words that either of those groups would use? Right. And that's like, I kind of start from there. Like, what's my story? What's my background? I got a lot of baggage in my life. Right. But those worst moments and all those things that hurt me, they are a part of me, but they don't define and limit me.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you finally figure out who you are and what you love and what you do, right, then how do you protect that, which is with boundaries. And I like to explain how boundaries aren't FUs. They're not fuck offs to people.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do say that to someone and whatever. There's so many opinions about that. But it really is about just learning to say no. So changing that people pleasing thing to be like, if someone is always asking you to do something, it's because they on some level know you're a sucker.
Yeah.
And they're unloading on you. And what I would do is, if you can't say the word no, is don't respond to the text right away. And then just say no, can't. And don't elaborate. When you elaborate, that's when they draw you in. Oh, but if
Mhm.
you could do it by Thursday at 6, that's fine by me too. The answer, no.
Yeah.
And then all that anxiety comes up, then we like heal it with mindset or energy healing or like whatever, like, but that's a place where you could be like, oh, my self-worth, I've been hiding behind doing that for you, and I'm really unhappy doing it. I might be doing it because I don't want you to hate me. I want to make sure you like me. If I don't say yes, then you're going to have a different opinion of me, but really not really. That's not going to actually happen. If it does, they're no good for you anyway.
Right.
And then I love talking about self-care in a way. For me, self-care makes you lose time. So for me, it's dancing. I love dancing and my
Yay.
kitty. All right. So when I'm dancing, I'm not in charge of anything. I don't have to find anything in the closet. I'm not finding, I'm just not parenting or being a wife or anything else. It's 100% Holly time. And I love it. I absolutely love it. So one of my favorite slightly snarky Holly's healing tips is, life's too short to wear uncomfortable bras or be in uncomfortable relationships.
I love it.
Right?
This is just straight facts. I love that.
It's just totally fine. Like we all have that bra that pokes or squeezes. Like, you're worth whatever money to go buy another bra. You could buy a schmancy one, or you could just go get one that works, like whatever, but you shouldn't be uncomfortable. You shouldn't be made less than in a relationship for a relationship to work.
Yay. Okay. We had a total glitch. We were putting our hand over the heart, and must be like the magnetism from the energy just
All the woo-woo energy made everything blow up.
yes. So I would love to just kind of wrap up with you and summarize some of the things we talked about, because I thought there was just so much good stuff. If you could tell the audience just like one really good thing that you need them to know, what would you say?
That's such a big one. I feel like I should say something super important. I
No
think
pressure.
no, there's no pressure. What do they want me to say today? I just think you're good enough now,
Yes. Oh, I love that.
and you'll feel better soon.
Mm.
Right? Because we're all on a healing journey. We all have ups and downs. The people who like to guide you as well. Like, there are hiccups. There are latent periods where everything goes quiet, usually before a growth. I feel like most people have the opportunity to look back. When I was younger, I used to look at old photo albums, but everything's on your phone nowadays. But just to look back at where you were, things that are gone, things that you miss, and then you get to create what you want. And
That
there's
was
no,
beautiful.
oh, good, I did good. And I
So
think for
good.
me, it's the time limit. I still, time is a tricky widget for me.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't it be nice if it happened now?
Mhm.
Yeah, it would, I guess, but maybe it's not. And it doesn't mean that it's not coming. It doesn't mean that it's not coming in a better way.
Yeah.
We're here for the journey, not the end game.
I love that I love everything you just said. It just really resonated with me. Just one thing that I always like to point out in my podcast is that just because we help people do this work, it doesn't mean we're not still healing or doing our own journey. And just even timing, like I've felt so divinely supported and so like things are clicking into place really well for me right now. But I also want to point out that I spent the whole last 6 months of last year, like, what am I doing? Am I on path? Do I, in this like little mini crisis of my own of like, nothing's working for me. So like all of those phases are relevant. All the phases in your life are relevant. And just because you're in a hermit phase, a latent phase, it doesn't mean your moment isn't coming. It doesn't mean that things won't click into place. But I knew for that period of time, I had some massive healing to do to be able to create space, like we talked about in the beginning, to be able to receive the new stuff that's coming in for me. And I had to do the fucking work, and it wasn't cute and it wasn't pretty and
Uh,
it was a mess. I mean,
the work
like
could be ugly. That's
the
okay.
work
That's
can
okay.
be a little ugly. Yeah,
It's an
it wasn't
ugly
cute.
cry.
It
I
is.
think Also, I think anyone like on a somewhat spiritual path or a path of growth from last June through February was God's way of telling you all the work you've done matters, but how you think it's going to show up is none of that.
Right.
It's not what you've been working for. Like, I know you really, I like to use myself as a reference. So for me, I had a literary agent. I did all the right things. Da, da, da. I've been building
Yep.
my business, yada, yada. I ended up firing my literary agent. I chose to be an independently published person. I made all of those choices that it's just like what I said before. Well, if we've been together for so long, this is what you want to do. My ego is like, I've won awards for my writing. I have
Yeah.
awards.
Yes.
So of course I should be traditionally published. Of course I should be marketed by the company. Da, da, da. No. And God said, silly girl. Since when have you done anything the way everybody else does?
Right.
You going to let it go? Are you going to let it go now? How about now? Should I
Yep.
make it harder? How about now? And I was like, okay. I gave up. I gave up. I used to be a film and TV producers, and I used to be a member of the Producers Guild. I have not lived in LA for a decade.
Yeah.
I just gave that up, that membership up. And it's a total but I worked 20 years to have that.
Yeah.
And I was like, when you let it go, you just don't know what's going to fill it up. And I think typically it's better,
Right.
but the letting go is so hard.
It's a beast. It's a beast. And it's a process. And you were talking about this earlier, is that sometimes you'll feel like, yes, I'm doing it. I'm doing the work. And sometimes you'll be like, the work's doing me. It's not cute. So it's okay. All of those emotions, all of those feelings, all of those chutes and ladders vibes where we climb up and we slide back down, like all of those moments are absolutely important, necessary, and use them wisely, I would say,
It's okay to slow down. Not like
Yeah.
COVID, the world is rushing. And there's freaking war going on right now, people. So my husband asked me this a lot. He's like, you keep saying the age of Aquarius, but the world is a shit show. And I was like, well, I feel like it's the darkest before the dawn.
Absolutely. Yep. And the one thing that you said that I just want to reiterate as well was that it's temporary and it gets to get better, and to hang in there, because I feel like in the book I'm putting out hopefully this year, in the book I'm intending to put out this year, I write a lot about just that processing through that dark stuff. And I think the biggest lie we tell ourselves is that it doesn't get better, that it can't get better, that it needs to have that one specific thing, job, feature, person in order to get better. And so just a beautiful reminder from you, and I'll extend on to that it's temporary, and that the universe really knows what it's doing. If we can back off long enough to let and see and wait and let that show up in the right timing, there's really magic that can click in there. So I just love conversations with you.
Oh, thank you. I feel the same way. I feel the same way.
So where can people find your book, Real Not Perfect?
So it is on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Noble. Smaller retailers could probably order it for you if you want to support a brick and mortar store near you. So anywhere. And if you are on Kindle Unlimited, my way of trying to giving back just a little bit is I have it for free on Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah.
So if you don't have the money or the means to do it, I still want the healing to be available to you. So it's there.
I love that. And is there other ways that you'd like for people to connect with you?
Yeah, come find me on Instagram at Holly Hughes Intuitive. And also, if you like K dramas, and only if you like K dramas, you can find me on TikTok. But it's all about that because that's me being silly because you need room for that in your life as well.
I love it. Okay. Thank you so much,
Thank
Holly, for
you.
joining me.